Hey brother! Ben, we all know that Harry Potter is not just an amazing Quidditch player, but also the youngest Quidditch player at Hogwarts in a century.
According to McGonagall.
A century. In 100 years, not a single other 11-year-old has had the talent to make it onto one of the teams. It really is quite an achievement for someone who only learned how to fly that day. I can personally see why Malfoy was so upset. I mean, he's actually good at Quidditch, and somehow he ends up being the reason Harry makes it onto the team? I mean, what if Gryffindor didn't have an opening at Seeker that year? He didn't even have to try out, which is saying something. Harry himself doesn't have to try out for the team, but also Harry himself makes Ron, his best friend, try out 2 years in a row. What? Anyway, with such an accomplishment, it begs the question, who was that other Quidditch player 100 years ago? And guys, I think I know the answer. Okay, so Harry begins attending Hogwarts in 1991, meaning that no other first years have made the house team since 1891, give or take a few years. I mean, if it's 99 or 98, I think people would still say a century. Either way, it's hard to figure out because how are we supposed to know what happened in the 1890s? Well, this is why I love the Harry Potter fan community, because they have got everything mapped out and recorded, like, everything. And one of my favorite features of the Harry Potter wiki is that you can just click on any given year and find out what important things happened in the wizarding world that year. This will be easy, right? Just click on 1891 and no! The only important thing, apparently, that happened that year is that a Muggle clock shop, Garice and Sonnleitner, was opened in New York City. So... Wait, but what does it say in 1892? Does that say Sasquatch Rebellion? Huh. Apparently an army of Sasquatch attacked the MACUSA headquarters in Washington and forced them to relocate to New York City. Well, at least there's a good clock shop there. But actually, that's not the most important thing that happened in 1892. The most important thing, at least as it relates to Quidditch, is that it's the last time the Chudley Cannons won the League Cup. Chudley Cannons, boom, boom, boom. We are not pirates. Yeah, I agree. They need better songs. Or to just be pirates. And actually, even though that is about Quidditch, it's not even the most important thing that happened in 1892 that relates to the question we are trying to answer. The most important thing is that in 1892, Albus Dumbledore began attending Hogwarts and was sorted into Gryffindor. Yeah, what are the freaking odds? Like, no first years have made a house team in a century, and literally a century ago, the greatest student the school would ever know happened to start there? Coincidence? I don't think so. So yes, today I'm going to try and figure out if 199 years ago, Albus Dumbledore was the last first year to make a house team. Because if that was the case, you'd imagine it was somewhat common knowledge, or at least that someone would have to tell Harry, right? Well, not necessarily. Let me repeat, it was 100 years ago, and in terms of Harry Potter, I'm not sure how many other characters are even old enough to have been around to see it happening or even remember it happening. Second, yes, I'm sure making the team at such a young age does mean he's a very exceptional player, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's a legendary player that they're going to talk about forever. Because third, even if he was super crazy awesome good at Quidditch, it's Albus Dumbledore. Quidditch is like the least of his accomplishments at school. No amount of talent on the Quidditch field is going to be able to compete with the actual truly brilliant magical mind that was Albus Dumbledore, who was communicating with world leaders as a teenager and like inventing uses for dragon's blood and whatever else he did while he was at Hogwarts. But I can hear you thinking, Jay, even if no one else was old enough to remember it or even knows about it, surely Dumbledore would tell Harry. Right? Well, to that I would reply, yeah, because Dumbledore is so good at telling Harry things. If anything, the fact that he didn't tell Harry is more supportive of this theory. Can't you just see Dumbledore sitting there like, would this be comforting information to Harry? Probably. Should I tell him? What would be the point? Best not. So yes, I think it is totally possible that 100 years ago, Dumbledore was that Quidditch player. But in the grand scheme of things, compared to everything else that he accomplishes, it's not a big enough deal that anyone even knows about it or remembers it in the present. But just because it's possible he could have played, doesn't mean he did. So from here, I had to scour all of the books for any bits of evidence that Dumbledore might have at one time been a Quidditch player. And although it is very spread out amongst the books, the evidence is there? The first hint we have that Dumbledore might have played Quidditch comes in the Philosopher's Stone, and it's actually what prompts Harry, Ron, and Hermione to head down the trapdoor and try and retrieve the stone. They are convinced that Snape is about to steal the stone and in a last-ditch effort throw caution to the wind and reveal their secret to Professor McGonagall so she will get on their level. But she dismisses them anyway, says the stone is perfectly well protected without their help and that it doesn't matter, they can't talk to Dumbledore. He just got an urgent message from the Ministry of Magic and flew off at once. Flew off, as in used a broomstick, didn't apparate. In fact, Dumbledore references it himself later in the hospital wing when he says he must have crossed Hermione's owl in mid-air. But really, it is odd to me that he would just fly instead of apparate, unless he just really loves flying, because, he used to play Quidditch. And before you scream at your computer screen, yes, I know you can't apparate from inside Hogwarts. It is totally possible he was just flying to the edge of the grounds and then apparating. But if that was the case, there's flu powder too, isn't there? Either way, once Dumbledore got back to the school and decided to go help Harry through the trapdoor, he too would have had to have mounted one of the brooms and do some pretty fancy flying to catch one of the keys. Probably not quite as fancy as Harry because the key would have already been caught twice by then, but I definitely think he had to catch it. I suppose it's possible Dumbledore could have just removed the enchantments without having to physically complete them, but if it's even possible to do that, are they even obstacles at all? He knows he's defending from Voldemort, right? And certainly he would think Voldemort would be capable of breaking enchantments the exact same way, so yeah, I think he had to go through it. So right away in Philosopher's Stone, we get two good examples of Dumbledore being good on a broom, but then the path goes cold until 5 books later when during the Half-Blood Prince, we see him and Harry flying towards the lightning-struck tower. And let me just read you the passage because it is very reminiscent of how she often describes Harry searching for the snitch. Harry glanced sideways at Dumbledore, ready to grab him should he fall, but the sight of the dark mark seemed to have acted upon Dumbledore like a stimulant. He was bent low over his broom, his eyes fixed upon the mark, his long silver hair and beard flying behind him on the night air. Sounds very much like a seeker, does it not? But perhaps the most concrete evidence we have comes from Elphius Doge in his In Memoriam piece for the Daily Prophet. In it, he says, in a matter of months, his own fame began to eclipse that of his father. He not only won every prize of note that the school offered, he was soon in regular correspondence with the most notable magical names of the day. So 2 things there. First is within a few months, meaning as soon as he got to school, like his first year. And the second is won every prize of note the school had to offer. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but I dare say that would include the Quidditch Cup. Would it not? Because if he truly won every prize, it would have to include the cup, meaning he would have had to have been on the team, right? But that's not all. For one tiny bit more of support, we turn to none other than the abysmally awful Chudley Cannons. You remember them from earlier in the video, right? The not pirates? Boom, 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 we are not pirates. Well, then you may also recall that the last time they won the League Cup was in 1892, the same year Albus Dumbledore began attending Hogwarts. Which wouldn't really be relevant except for one line Dumbledore says to Snape in Deathly Hallows. "You alone know whether it will harm your soul to help an old man avoid pain and humiliation," said Dumbledore. "I ask this one great favor of you, Severus, because death is coming for me as surely as the Chudley Cannons will finish bottom of this year's league." Now, this stood out to me for 2 reasons. 1, it means Dumbledore definitely follows Quidditch, but 2, it means he specifically follows the Chudley Cannons, suggesting he is a fan of theirs. Which is important because that anyone is a fan of them at all is ridiculous because they're so terrible and so not pirates. On the other hand though, think about how kids choose what their favorite team is. Imagine you're young 11-year-old Albus Dumbledore and you've just made the Quidditch team for Gryffindor and you are the youngest player to do so ever. Doesn't it make sense that you would suddenly then become a big fan of whatever the best team at that time was? I think so. And who would that have been for young Albus Dumbledore? The Chudley Cannons. Boom. Boom, boom. We are not pirates. Seriously guys, I don't know who writes these things, but you have got to get a better song. And there you go. Dumbledore acts like a seeker when he's on the broom. He is nimble enough to have caught the key. He won every award at Hogwarts, which must have included the Quidditch Cup, and he has a justifiable reason for liking old Chudley. And it's all because Dumbledore was the youngest player at Hogwarts for a century. until Harry Potter showed him up. And before we go, I just want to give a quick shout out to Ben and I's little brother, Tyler, who actually first approached me with this theory. If you want to hear him talk about Harry Potter, him and one of his buddies host a podcast every week called Bacon and Eggs, a movie lovers podcast. And right now they're actually in the middle of reviewing all 8 Harry Potter films. I will put a link in the description if you want to go check them out. But Ben, my question for you and everyone else is, what do you think? Was Dumbledore in fact the youngest player at Hogwarts in a century? Let me know your thoughts in the towel section down below. These socks are amazing! And a special thanks to these patrons who support Super Carlin Brothers on Patreon. Hey, I know you. I recognize you from the Discord. Ooh, you're looking good. Did you get a new font size? Wow. If you'd like to support us and see your name here on this list and have access to other special perks like bloopers and the show after the show, make sure you check out patreon.com/SuperCarlinBrothers. Guys, thanks as always for watching this video. Please remember to like it if you haven't already and subscribe so you don't miss any future Harry Potter action from us. If you want to see how we think they could fix Quidditch, you can check out this video right here. Or if you want to see how Kowalski is almost definitely a descendant of Helga Hufflepuff, you can check out this video right here. But Ben, that's all I've got for you today, man. I will see you in another life, brother.